So welcome everyone to our webinar today, Learn from the Best, Putting Net Promoter Score into Practice. Again, as James said, thanks James, my name is Sophie Adams from the Retention People, and I will be leading you through the session today with the help of Ken Brown, owner-operator of Fitness Incentive and one of our very successful customers. The goal of our session today is to provide you with some insight of the importance of receiving member feedback through surveying, specifically through Net Promoter Score, how to evaluate the feedback, the importance of action planning on the feedback, and most importantly, following up with the members who took the time to complete the surveys for you. So we're going to get through a number of things related to Net Promoter Score today, but most importantly, the goal of the session today is really to give you a perspective of the experience of a real-life user of NPS. And as I mentioned, and as James mentioned, we also have Ken Brown, owner-operator of Fitness Incentive, a very successful club on Long Island in New York, who has graciously agreed to provide you with some very valuable information on how Net Promoter Score is helping his business operations. So first and foremost, I would like to have Ken give you a quick overview of his club and the services his team provides. So with that said, I'll hand it over to Ken to give you a quick insight on his fitness facility or his club. So here you go, Ken. You're welcome.
Thanks, Sophie. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. I'll give you a little background on our club. We're what I guess would be called an independent these days. It's just a single club that we operate, about 18,000 square feet. But we are a full-service facility. We have a very large number of classes a week. We have well over 160 classes a week, which sounds like a tremendous amount, and it actually is. But the club kind of evolved from an aerobics studio, believe it or not, in the 1980s, and we've been doing this now for about 32 years. So there was this long, slow evolutionary process where we emerged from an aerobics classes only format and then started to introduce some equipment, and slowly but surely over 30 years built ourselves up into a full-service club where we now have a boutique, we have a spa, we have a cafe, we have classes, we have free weights, we have personal training, and et cetera, et cetera. So one of the things that is unique for us a little bit too, and its benefit, is that we are located in a real village kind of environment where we are. We're in Babylon Village on Long Island, and it's one of the places that has been fortunate enough to retain village characteristics. So there's a strong sense of community. People still shop in the downtown area, things like that, which in many places on Long Island, which is, for any of those who know it, is a very suburban and spread out area. There's a lot of malls and things like that, so a lot of the villages have kind of gone away over the last 50 years or so. The other thing that's interesting, I think, to note is that since we evolved from a class model, we are mostly female. We're probably about 75% female, but keep in mind that at one point when we switched over and grew into a full-service health club, at one point we were probably 99.9% female. So we've actually kind of grown our male base very significantly over the last, say, 10 years or so. And the other thing to point out, I guess one thing that's unique is because we're full service and we offer so many different services to people, we do get a lot of our revenue from non-membership dues sources. We're probably over 50% non-membership dues on a monthly basis. So I think that's pretty high in the industry. I just wanted to mention it because it's somewhat unique too. That's like in a nutshell.
Great. Thanks, Ken. That was a great snapshot of your business. Just to add a little bit onto that, Ken's club and team has been voted Best of Long Island 17 times and 9 times as Best Club. And more than 90% of his members are extremely satisfied and very likely to recommend them to someone that they know. So as we go through the session today, again, the goal is to have a dialogue with Ken on how he's using Net Promoter Score and the survey feedback information to improve his business. As you heard, his team does a fantastic job to be #1 in their community for many years. And Ken, I believe you're also one of the highest priced clubs in the area, if not the highest club in the area, highest priced club in the area. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct.
Yeah.
We've basically held the line, even though, as you know, over the last few years, there have been a tremendous number of the $9 clubs have come in. We're at $65 a month, where the average in the area is probably like between 9 and 19, I'd say.
Right, right. So feel free to put in any questions in the chat box, and then we can answer them at the end of the session. Okay. So first I want to take or talk about and take some time to talk about why we should be gathering some type of customer or member feedback. So gathering feedback will obviously help improve your services, your products, give you direction on how to improve other operational areas, such as potentially maybe your hiring procedures, your training procedures, who you train, what are the things that you're going to invest in. Customer loyalty is based on you understanding what your member needs, what they want, and what they already like about your facilities. You can't possibly understand what needs improvement or what's working until you actually ask your members or your customers. You can't possibly know where to invest time and money until you know what your members are experiencing, whether it's good or bad. By asking your members to give their feedback, you're giving them a seat at your decision-making table, which will help you better understand how you should be spending your operational time and possibly allocate some of your budget. So Ken, why was it important for you to get feedback from your members from the beginning?
Well, one of the things you just mentioned is key, is that we're a high-price club. We've been in business for over 30 years. But, you know, the environment has been shifting a lot towards the low-end club over the last few years, and there's also been, at the same time, a growth in the number of independent studios. You know, things that are offering either things like CrossFit or yoga or boot camp or whatever it might be, the flavor of the month. So, you know, the competition has been, if anything, accelerating over the last, say, 10 years. At the same time, as I know everybody in this room would agree, the economy has been less than ideal as well. So there's been a tremendous amount of pressure to be able to keep up, in fact, stay ahead. So we really felt it was critical for us to engage the customer on a pretty regular basis to get feedback and be able to be proactive in kind of like making sure that we were staying ahead of any problem before it became a big issue for us, or it started to bleed members from us. So that was the primary reason, I think.
That's right. And you're most certainly doing that, being awarded 9 times the best in Long Island, so kudos to you guys. And what would you say were your goals or priorities as it related to gathering member feedback?
Well, one of the things I think is that, you know, that a lot of times problems in the gym start as almost a whisper. You know, a few people will recognize that there's something that's not right or they don't like, and they'll say it to their friends, and it might take a little while to percolate up, and by the time it percolates up, usually it's become somewhat of a bigger problem, you know. So I think by being proactive and asking people regularly, you know, what do they think, we get the sort of the sense early, even in positive feedback sometimes. I mean, I've seen people rate us a 9 or a 10 and then say, oh, but lately this blah, blah, blah has been, you know, not as good as it used to be. And it gives you just a sense of like there might be a problem there. And you don't need to have a huge consensus of people. You can have even a couple of voices that correctly point you to an area where you know there's the beginning of an issue. So let you stay ahead of your problems, which to us is really critical. And the other thing it lets us know also is sometimes we've actually seen, you know, more than a couple of things about an area. We had a lot of feedback about our cycling classes, like when we first started this. And as a result, we really made a huge effort to upgrade our cycling program, bought new bikes, reinvigorated the whole program, and et cetera. And we saw a huge improvement there. So, it definitely helps us to identify where we can improve and stay ahead of where we maybe are starting to see a problem.
Mm-hmm. Right. And in today's social media environment, whether it's good or bad, it greatly amplifies very quickly. So definitely social media plays a key role in today's environment and how your members will tell others about you, definitely.
Usually.
Yeah. So gathering member feedback is the best way to ensure customer satisfaction and loyalty. And measuring customer satisfaction and loyalty helps you determine, as Ken talked about, whether you, your services, your products meet the expectation or potentially they should be surpassing the expectation and creating loyalty. And we all know that satisfaction is not good enough. A satisfied customer is not loyal to your brand or loyal to your club, and they'll jump ship quite quickly. We really need to understand how to move the needle from satisfaction to loyalty. Some of our research actually showed that members who said they were satisfied, still about 80% of them actually canceled or jumped ship in some way. So being satisfied is not good enough. Surveying provides actionable insight to create a better customer experience. Again, as Ken mentioned, the process of winning new business and retaining existing members is getting harder and harder. So offering an amazing experience and value will keep your members coming back and referring others to you. But first you need to know where your opportunities lie. So Ken, were you surprised at some of the responses, or the number of responses, first of all, that were coming in? Were you surprised at the number of responses?
Well, we have a pretty engaged community where we are. I mean, when you're class-based like we are, you have a tendency to have a lot of relationships form. So instructors know people, the desk knows people. It's a very engaged community. So I wasn't shocked that we got a lot of responses, but I was really, I mean, first of all, I was pleasantly surprised at how positive in general the responses were. We got a lot of compliments, we got people thanking you and things like that. But like I mentioned before, sometimes even in the nicest response where people will say, oh, it's so great, blah, 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 I love the gym, I'd never leave. Oh, but lately I noticed this problem. I think that was the real, one of the real valuable things is that if something is bothering a person who, professes such great, excitement and loyalty to your club, that's something that you really need to get on, I think. I think you have to take those comments very seriously. And also, like I mentioned before, you get surprised that, you're not aware that there's really a problem. Mentioning the cycling before, or the parking, or anything like that. Sometimes you are aware. Parking, I'm pretty sure we're all aware that there's always going to be an issue with parking at peak times. But, these little things that just creep into your program sometimes, you don't see them until somebody mentions them. It's just very hard to have your eyes everywhere. This kind of helps with that a lot, I think.
Great, great. And surveying members can absolutely help improve your customer retention by sending out surveys regularly, as Ken had just mentioned. You can ensure you're actually keeping your finger on the pulse. If a member becomes frustrated or perceives a competitive offer or service to be better, they will start exploring that option or those options and either cancel or stop coming to you or stop doing business with you. You need to know when they start feeling and thinking this way immediately. As Ken said, you need to be proactive, or we need to be proactive rather than reactive, and that's what Net Promoter Score and surveying and getting feedback from your members allows you to do. And Ken, you mentioned that you were surprised at some of the feedback, negative and positive, that you were receiving, such as you found out about your cycling program wasn't to the standards that you expected, and you revamped or tried to improve that program, and you focused on that. And over what sort of period did that take to move that from a negative to a positive?
It took a few months. It probably took us about 3 months. We actually wound up starting to speak to people because we saw the feedback. So rather than just following up and saying, oh, gee, thanks for the feedback, we're going to try to do better, we actually would get in touch with them or even speak to them in person and try to get some real sense of what they liked and didn't like, what they would like to see us do. And as a result, just for example, the cycle program, what we wound up doing is saying, okay, the bikes needed to be replaced, for one thing. And so we brought in 3 different bikes and had a contest between the bikes, let the members choose which one they loved the best, and that's going to become our new bike, and we promoted that very heavily. So that really engaged them, and they felt excited about being part of that process. And then as the new bikes came in, we retrained all the instructors on them. We reintroduced the program with different class formats and different ideas. And that invigorated the instructors as well. So over maybe, I would say about a 3 to 4 month period, we really saw the cycling program go from being sort of a weakness to a strength again, which is, kind of a great thing.
Yeah, which is a pretty quick win as well. Over a 2-month period, you got all that.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's
Absolutely.
fantastic.
And it gives you the opportunity to correctly focus your resources, which is important. You focus on where you can get the most bang for your dollar, which is very important. And you also focus on the areas where you're the most vulnerable, which is critical, because that's where you're the weakest. That's where people are going to start to bleed off. So
Great.
Critical as well.
And can you send out your surveys 21 days when a member first joins your facility and approximately 90 days after that? Is that a good cycle? Do you think this works, or do you think that's a good cycle?
I think that works. We've really found that a lot of the default models that came with the system were well thought out and really were the way we implemented it, and they've continued to work. We've added additional communication type emails that we schedule on a regular basis just to make sure we stay in touch. But the basic surveying, we've basically found that works the way it is. That worked out of the box for us.
Great, great. And the best business decisions are based on real data, not hunches. So customer feedback is really the holy grail of tangible data. As Ken mentioned about their cycling program, they collected the real data through the surveys that prompted a decision to invest based on those specific facts, not assumptions. Ken, how did you increase, or did you increase, or did your number of responses actually increase from the start of using the survey?
I don't think we've seen a huge or consistent increase. I think it's been pretty stable for us. We've always gotten a pretty good amount of responses, enough that we could feel comfortable that we're getting a good read. So we really haven't had to focus too much on like going out and making sure people answer the survey.
Mm-hmm.
I will mention one thing though, is that people even occasionally will tell us that even if they don't have any feedback, they'll just tell us that they appreciate the fact that we're asking, that's something that can't be underrated either. Just the fact that you're attempting to communicate, you're giving them an opportunity to express their actual opinions and so forth. Even when they have nothing really to add, but even then it's still a valuable thing, I think.
Perfect. And surveying will identify customer advocates, or in the no promoter world, we call those promoters. So promoters are one of the biggest marketing opportunities. They're a tremendous value at little or no cost at all. So don't be afraid to ask for testimonials, referrals. More times than not, these promoters will actually want to help you out. Ken will discuss a little bit later on how he's using promoters to help his business grow or continue to be as good or exceptional as it is right now. So now that so you've spent, most of you, if not all of you, have spent months, years building your brand name, promoting your sites and services within, investing in your new member acquisitions. But you need to ask yourself, are you taking the same amount of time and effort to ensure your brand and customer experience quality stays at its highest level? So I want to give you a quick overview of Net Promoter Score, and Ken will give you some insights on how he's using Net Promoter Score to help his club continually improve. Net Promoter Score, which I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, have heard about anyways, is a de facto industry standard metric for measuring loyalty and predicting future business performance. The system has been proven and born out of a number and a variety of research studies over many, many years, including studies with Harvard Business School and Bain & Company. NPS has been proven to be one of the most accurate and effective ways to measure true customer sentiment, which is a predictor of their future behavior. There are plenty of products out there to monitor customer behavior, but NPS is the only true way to monitor intent, at least in a way that you'll actually get customers to engage with you. Net Promoter asks that one simple question: how likely are you to recommend your facility or your clubs, and then provides an open feedback request as well. It then gathers the scoring, but most importantly, it gathers the feedback as per why the member gave the score. And the scoring is based on from a score of 0 to 10, 0 to 6 being your detractors, those unhappy members, those members that are probably ready to leave your brand. The 7 to 8s are your passives, those members that are on the fence, don't really care one way or another, and they're very easily swayed to move to your competition if the competition have newer equipment, are closer, or they're more cost-effective for them. And the 9 to 10s are your loyalists. So those are your brand advocates. Those are the members that are going to praise you to everyone that they know and refer people. So Ken, how long have you been using NPS?
I guess about 1.5 years now, maybe coming up on 2 years in the summer. So,
Yeah, it has been. And your score has moved progressively over the last 1.5 years, which is fantastic. How did you communicate to your teams that you were going to start surveying using Net Promoter Score, and what type of conversations did it start? And a second part of that question, were there any staff that were opposed or didn't understand why you wanted to survey members?
Well, I had actually kind of stumbled upon NPS as a concept separately from TRP in reading, and as often happens in life, the minute you become aware of something, you become more sensitive to it. And then soon after I found out about it, I saw TRP was doing this, and I got in contact with you guys. We have a marketing/management team that meets on a regular basis, and we are always discussing different ways to improve and how do we stay on top of things and how do we measure things and so forth. And we started this conversation about NPS even before we started to look at TRP. So when TRP showed up, everybody was like, wow, this looks perfect. This looks like it's going to do exactly what we wanted it to do. So truthfully, I think we had a really enthusiastic team, at least from the the marketing/management group, and the staff themselves. I think it's slowly trickled down to them as well, because we make an effort to communicate to the staff that this is an important thing. Look how good you're doing, etc. And they take pride in it as well. So I think it's been very well received generally across the board.
Mm-hmm. And then your response rate is about 25% response rate to the surveys, and about, I think it's between 75 to 80% leaving comments. What do you think influences those numbers?
I think that the comment portion is probably easier to understand. I think that the comments portion is basically people are engaged. They feel like this is an opportunity to speak, to say what they think. And whether it's usually complimentary or if it's extremely negative, it's just an opportunity for them to voice their opinion. And I think nowadays people have become much more comfortable and used to doing that, especially with the rise of social media, where the whole democratization of everyone's opinion. Everyone has kind of become a critic as well, which can be good or bad. But in this case, it really encourages them to be a little more open, I think. So you get useful feedback.
Fantastic. Great. So to give you a little bit of insight in how we send and collect the Net Promoter Score surveys, the system is set up in a way that the surveys are auto-delivered. So the automated email delivery means no manual work on your part. The system knows and understands when to send a survey to your members based on your member data information. As compared to when you're doing maybe word-of-mouth surveys or comment box surveys, these word-of-mouth or comment box surveys can sometimes cause an imbalanced perspective because they're not monitored, they're not received timely enough, there isn't a systematic consistency of follow-up, they're not being tracked, they're not being reported on trends, and so on. Also to note, surveys are most accurate over time. You don't want to send large sets of surveys when a singular event might occur. This will impact your results either positively or negatively. It's definitely not going to, or will give you a false reading of how you're doing overall. Ken, why is automation important to you when sending out these surveys?
Because it really is critical, because you need to be consistent with all these things. I mean, with the surveys themselves, you have to just be on, it creates, I think it's what you just said is true. You're consistently seeing a trending, which is very important. The question is very, very simple. The response takes literally seconds to do. People are not off-put by the idea that they have to delve into some deep survey that's going to be difficult for you to unwind at the end anyway. So it allows you to really kind of stay on the trend, which is really critical. And the other thing, we also, as I mentioned before, we automate a set of communications even outside the survey. For similar, we like to make sure we're constantly, 14 days in, 30 days in, 60 days in, and so on. We send out some kind of communication, and it's automated as well through your system. So we have a lot of respect for the idea of automation. It takes out the human failure element. Somebody drops the ball, somebody forgets to do something, and it creates, as you said, this whole trending concept, which is critical.
Perfect. So now that you have the score and the feedback from members, now what do you do with it, with the information? So, well, you need to dig into the customer feedback, obviously, dig deeper into their insights. What can you do to fix their issues, or listen to potential opportunities that they might bring up, such as Ken mentioning earlier about investing in their cycling program. Sometimes the true root cause of a customer experience often lies deep within the organization or the operations, and you really need to find out what that is. So Ken, what sort of insight did you gain, and have there been any specific members or instances or areas that you maybe have identified and been able to engage with or learn about that you might not have learned about in the past?
I think that we learn about them in a more predictable and a more pleasant way. I know that sounds like, you're getting a criticism and maybe it's not so pleasant, but if anybody's experienced it, and I'm sure we all have, where you get into a situation where the problem's been allowed to fester in the background, where nobody has really come up forward and said anything about it, a lot of times those things tend to explode on you when you don't expect them to. Before you know it, there's a fight between members and an instructor, or something goes wrong on the floor, or some very bad situation. 25 members sign a letter to you saying this has to be changed or something like that. We really have found that across the board we're able to anticipate things much sooner. We take the voices seriously when we hear them. And, sure, there are things that you can never fix. But there's a lot of things that you can fix very easily. And sometimes even the things you can't fix can be made more palatable to the person just by saying, hey, we hear you. Well, we're trying to do our best with it. Even just that feedback alone is sometimes enough to keep the person recognizing that, yeah, this is maybe beyond your control, but thanks for listening to me. So, for us, it just lets us stay ahead of the curve on so many little things. Mm-hmm. And those little things often become big things down the road.
Fantastic. And how is the feedback shared with your team? Who do you share it with? How do you share it?
We have everybody on our management team gets a copy of the daily reports that are scheduled right out of the system. So everybody sees the feedback of the people who have responded that day, especially then they'll also get the report if there's any negatives as well. And then we have one person on the team who's the manager of the, actually the manager of our, sort of our customer service / front desk, who is the coordinator for that. So what they'll usually do is they'll look through it. They will in fact respond to all of the passives and the negatives by trying to engage the person, obviously. Sometimes we have problems that we know are just, not solvable, but even in those cases, we'll attempt to point them in a direction. And then we also look through the promoter scores, just trying to find people, as I mentioned before, who even though they're saying great things, are making, some comment that they think they wish something would be fixed or changed or improved. And finally, sometimes you get just the pleasant part of it. You get just an effusive, praise where you just want to contact the person and thank them. So we get across the board that one person coordinates, but what they'll do is they'll reach out among the team occasionally because they'll say, well, so-and-so knows something about the situation, or this person is responsible for this area, and that's where the problem has arisen, or this person knows that member and it would be better qualified to speak directly to them, things like that. So we have that one coordinator who then kind of like probably answers 70% herself, and then divvies up the remaining 30% or so to the appropriate level to get them, to the right person to fix the problem or address the person.
Great. So let's talk a little bit about closing the loop. So now that you have the feedback shared with your team, now what? There must be follow-up, and the goal of NPS or Net Promoter Score is to not only receive the feedback, but most importantly, actually follow up with that feedback, and most importantly, your detractors. So the goal is to follow up with the detractors within 2 days, your passives and promoters as well, because they're a good group to be following up with, moving your passives to promoters and your promoters using those as advocates, creating some sort of action plan, making sure that you're listening to them, the members taking the time to complete and provide feedback. Now they need to know that you received that feedback and you must follow up and you're going to do something about it. So we talked about who on your team actually receives the feedback and how that's being followed up with. How do you approach or address detractor feedback, and how do you approach uncontrollable detractor responses? How do you deal with those?
Yeah, those are interesting. In some ways, I think that's been the most creative kind of thing we've gotten out of this, is that there are certain things like that you would think of that you can't really solve. Sometimes there'll be things like, a class is overcrowded, or somebody says, the parking is overcrowded at peak hours and things like that, or even for us especially is that, the membership, the club's great, but the membership is so much more expensive than the other clubs in the area. And what we've done is we've actually kind of devised responses for those things that help mitigate the problem. I'll give you an example with parking. We have a private lot that maybe has 120 spots, but at peak hours that's not sufficient. So we also are surrounded by local lots that are the municipal type of lots. Some of the spaces are free, some of them are not. We've actually created a map of the entire parking in the village that basically says you can park here. Here's free parking. Here's 25-cent parking. And then we said here's a circle that's a 1-minute walk to the gym from there. And this, so now we can say, listen, I hear you, the parking can be a problem at times. Here's some additional parking that you can use that's really close to the gym, that's free, etc. Now, it doesn't solve the problem. Our lot is still overcrowded and probably too small for our peak times, but at least it lets them know that, listen, it's not so crazy. You can take a 1-minute walk and be in the gym. You're going to go on the treadmill when you get there anyway, so why not start walking in the parking lot? And it definitely helps to keep it under control. It lets people see that it's not really as serious a problem as they think it is. It's solvable. So that's like one example. There's other examples I could go into as well, but that's critical, I think, in some ways. It just shows that even though you can't solve it, you can still mitigate it.
Absolutely, and that's really thinking out of the box and letting the member know that you're trying to find some sort of solution for them, so that's fantastic. What are the benefits on following up with passives or promoters?
Well, as I mentioned before, the passives are often, it depends on how they're trending, but in any case, I think in some ways, for us at least, that the passives often are the most acute because those are the people who are like on the fence. They could go either way. And you really want to make sure that their problems are addressed. Because I think in some ways they are the most reasonable people when it comes to the problems. Your detractors, I find at least, that a lot of times they have just almost an unsolvable problem. It could be an attitude. It could be a thing that the gym just is not right for them. Your hours are not good for me. Okay, well, I hear you. I wish they were. We could talk to you about that, but we really can't solve it if you're going to work when we're closed, or if you're going to be here when we're closed. But when you look at the passives, a lot of times they'll come up with stuff like that's really actionable. Oh, the locker rooms are really, dirty in the afternoon, or there's no classes for me at 7 o'clock, or something like that. But those people you can really get on and actually say, listen, what are you looking for? What kind of times would work for you? We're going to send somebody else into the lockers those hours to make sure they're cleaned. You can respond very, very directly. And if they see that you've acted, first of all, I would think they're always impressed that you took it seriously. Secondly, when they see you actually do take a step, a lot of times those people will then trend up into becoming, 9s and 10s again. So
Great.
The passive data is just really, really critical for us.
Yeah. And just some of the research that we have seen, we see 30 to 40% of passives within 180 days actually churn. And promoters are one of your biggest opportunities for growth. So look at each promoter uniquely
Absolutely.
and identify the most useful requests. Maybe it's asking for referrals. Maybe it's a testimonial. Maybe they're going to be a workout buddy for a new member. So the point is to be strategic in how you actually leverage your promoters. So Ken, how do you leverage your promoters to help you to help your business?
The simplest way we leverage them right now is we use their comments as testimonials, and we use them all across our website. So we've actually embedded a testimonial app within our website that as we get the feedback, we're able to put the testimonials on the site, and we identify them to whatever, if there's a specific comment, say that's about the classes or about personal training, those comments will show up on those pages. And sometimes they're just incredibly great comments. I mean, the kind of stuff that you would pay for. So you're getting them for free, and there they are, and you can really share them. We also talk to people, and we've actually occasionally had people get involved with social media for us. We're actually responding to people for us, things like that. But the other thing that we get out of the promoter process is just to make sure we keep our relationship with those people really, really on the highest level. So we will, like I said, actually get on the phone and say, hey, you know what, that was just an amazing comment, or I was really sorry you had a problem with something. We're going to get on that. That kind of thing helps us a lot. Those people are your biggest promoters, your biggest fans, and you want to make sure that they stay happy. That's where you get your word of mouth and your positive feedback.
Great. So lastly, I want to talk about resurveying the members. Why do you feel it's important to repeat the process and resurvey your members?
I mean, it's simple. Nothing stays the same. I mean, the environment over the last several years has changed drastically. Where maybe we were there was 1 or 2 clubs in our area. Now there's probably in a 10-mile radius there's probably 15. You can never assume things are going to just stay the way they are. A. B, if you look about it, you must continue to have a healthy relationship and a healthy conversation with your members. That's what allows you to really make sure that you're actually doing what they expect, what they need, what they want from you. That's what really keeps you ahead. Most clubs are not doing this, I think. They sit back and they figure it out as they go. Or they're following a model that they inherited from some national chain and everything else. What we find is if we want to retain and maintain ourselves as a premier club where we can charge more, where we can provide better services, we have to be able to differentiate ourselves. So to differentiate ourselves, we have to make sure that we are serving the members as best as we possibly can. So it's critical for us.
Yeah, and your score is over 85% at this point, and you continue to resurvey your members even though you have a high promoter percent or a high promoter score. So that's fantastic.
Right.
Yeah. Great. So just as we wrap this up, just some key takeaways for you, and then Ken, I will ask you for your insight or your final thoughts as well. So, surveying should be captured daily, and it's a continual measurement. Automation, we believe, is key, and as Ken talked about, very important to him as well. Follow up with every member in some form, obviously best in person or by phone. Detractors, always make sure that you follow up within at least 48 hours. Gather every piece of feedback you can. You need to get a clear picture of what's driving the positive or the negative sentiment for your members, and set clear actions for improvement for them and for your teams, and make sure you're following up with that as well. Sharing information with your teams is key. It sets accountability and lets them know that they're being measured and they're part of the solution as well. And most important, I think, is don't get discouraged by low scores and aggressive high number of detractors when you first start. These are your opportunities for improvement and improvement in engagement and services. You're finally giving your members an opportunity to tell you how they feel about your club, your team, your culture, whatever that is. You need to make sure you listen intently and don't get discouraged by the potential low score. You can only improve from there. So Ken, just some final thoughts from you for the group would be great.
Yeah, I would like to emphasize what you just said on the last point. I mean, even though we score, in the 80s and so forth, I got to tell you that there are times when you get a negative comment back, and your first reaction is, to be like a mixture between depressed and angry about it. Mm-hmm. But the truth of the matter is, those things are all opportunities. There's always an opportunity to reach out, to change some situation, to change the way somebody thinks, to improve your club. So the negatives are actually, in a sense, they're potential positives, and you have to really look at those as opportunities. But what I said in this comment here is really the key, I think. Actively listen, and you have to adapt. You really have to be constantly changing, staying ahead of what's happening, and making sure that little problems don't slowly develop into big problems. That's the key, I think.
Fantastic. So again, I want to thank Ken for all of his insights with Net Promoter. I can't emphasize enough what an extraordinary job Ken and his team is doing using Net Promoter Score and member feedback to engage and really create a wow experience for their members, as is obviously telling by being voted, best in Long Island 17 times and 9 times in the club category, and 90% of his members indicating they would refer others. Fantastic work. So I'd like to finish it off there with next steps. So if you would like more information on Net Promoter Score and how we can help you get started in gathering information, you can reach out to me one-on-one. I'd be happy to provide you with additional information. But at this point, I'll open it up for questions. So James, if there are any questions from the group that can be answered online, then we could just have some of those, and any questions that may take a little bit more time, we'll probably answer those more one-on-one or follow up.